So early on in this process, I was asked if I would like to say a message, and I was really excited for the opportunity to do so. And when I was told about it, I was told that the series we were doing was God Speaks, where we would kind of talk about what God is saying to us or saying through us. And so I should have known, I should have kind of guessed that when I said I'd speak, they'd ask me, well, what is God saying to you right now? And you know that question, when you get that, you're like, good question. So I had to reflect a little bit. I had to think, well, what is God saying to me? And so after pausing and reflecting for a little bit, I kind of realized I do know what God is saying to me. And it comes in the form of a song. Now, who here has heard of the band DC Talk? The older band DC Talk, yeah. I say older and not old because my mom was a big fan of them. And anyone who's her age, I don't want to offend you, and I don't want to offend her if she, if you somehow, if anyone gets it back to her, please don't. But they're a little bit, at this point, they're old. They were famous. The song came out before I was alive, so, that's my metric for old. And the song is called Jesus Freak, and I listen to this song a lot. I love this song. So the song is kind of about being a freak for Jesus. I'm going to read some lyrics that kind of make this point from the song. So, I saw a man with a tat on his big fat belly. It wiggled around like marmalade jelly. Quick pause here. What a word picture is that, I'm not really singing it does it more justice, but I'm not going to sing. That's where I draw the line. So let me keep going. Sorry. It took me a while to catch what it said because I had to match the rhythm of his belly with my head. Jesus saves is what it read in typical tattoo green. He stood on the box in the middle of the city, and he claimed he had a dream. What will people think when they hear that I'm a Jesus freak? What will people do when they find that it's true? I don't really care that they label me a Jesus freak. There ain't no disguising the truth. Now, it's a lot better when it's sung. I promise you that. It sounds probably weird, like what's happening here. So I listened to this song a bunch, and one day I had this thought. I just thought, I want to be a Jesus freak. I want to be someone who lives my life in Christ, like he says in the song. I want to be not afraid to do something that may look silly to people for God. I want to live my life as a Jesus freak. Then I had the second thought. I wondered, what is the best way to do that? Because I think there certainly can be wrong ways to do that. I kind of had this mixed thinking where for a long time, my Christian faith, I lived my Christianity only inside the church, and it never went outside the church. And this song was my call to do something outside of the church. But at the same time, I had this problem where, I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to represent God poorly. That, I think, would be the worst thing. We know that faith requires action, but how we do those actions we need to be careful about. James 2:17, faith by itself, if not accompanied by action, is dead. We need the action, but we have to be very careful in how we take that action. So that's kind of was what I thought God was speaking to me, was to reflect upon what it means to take action for God in a way that is positive and how we should do it in the world for others. And now here's the tricky part. I was kind of mentioning there's plenty of examples of biblically and I think throughout history of people kind of misusing their attachment to God or their passion for God. Just look at the Pharisees, right? They got so caught up in the wrong things that they missed Jesus completely. And so that was my big fear, was missing the mark. And So when I was grappling with that question, I was reading my Bible. And I read Romans 12:9-21. And what caught my attention about this passage was the title of it, actually, at first. It was Love in Action. And that seemed to speak to what I was kind of dealing with in my head. So that's what I'd like to talk about today. Using Romans 12:9-21 as a guide, we are going to look at how to put our love into action. How can we be, Jesus freaks? So, first, I'd like to read the passage, Romans 12:9-21. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, "It is mine to avenge. I will repay," says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. What an amazing passage is that. That kind of sums up what I want to say better than anything I could say right now. So I guess you could say we're done. Mic drop, Paul by Paul, we're over. But no, I have at least 15 more minutes, and I don't, the band's not up yet, so I have to keep going. But that is an amazing passage, and it really kind of gets at what I would like to point out today. So I'm going to point out that there's a lot in this passage. I would like to point out three key things that need to lead us as Christians. Three key things that kind of lead us in how we can put love into action. The first one is that love begins with self-examination and humility. Before we can take love into action, love begins with self-examination and humility. And so why does love begin with self-examination and humility? And how can we do that? I think the easiest starting place as to why humility is so important for love is to contrast what happens when humility is not at the center of love. When we don't have humility and we show love. See, without humility in love, love is warped. It's not love. Pride fills that spot. Pride makes love about me. When love is a communal thing, it should be about us. It's a relational term, right? Like, have you guys seen, there's one of my favorite movies. I don't want to spoil the ending, so I'm not going to give it a name. But it's a romance movie, and it's a musical romance movie. Maybe that already gives it away. And it's a love story, okay? And these two characters, they fall for each other. They do the old, you're pretty, you're pretty, you know. I should narrate romance movies, you know. But so they fall for each other, and then throughout the movie, they have difficulties in their relationship. Things pop up, and their relationship is kind of tried. And at one point, they end up moving away. And she finds her dream of being an actress, and he finds his dream of opening a jazz club, if that gives away what the movie is. And then at the end, they come back together. She walks into his jazz club, and they make eye contact. And these are people who loved each other an extreme amount. But now she has a new family, and he has his own career. And what they do is they look at each other, and in most romance movies, you expect the lead to do something about it, to kind of maybe take her and be like, let's leave everything behind. It's just the two of us. But in this story, what the point is that the love is more powerful because they're giving up on each other, putting the other one first. They love them enough to support them in their dream now, in their place now, and to not complicate their lives. And that's what love needs to start with, a sense of humility, that we're willing to put others before ourselves, and that's how we need to start when we take our love into action. Paul says the same thing in Romans 12, 9-10. He says, love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good, be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Honor one another above yourselves. Put others above yourselves. Paul is saying that genuine love is humble. Later in the passage, he says, still speaking about love, live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not be proud. Honoring one another above yourself. And this is so important when we put love into action. Love into action to me meant, when I first heard it, I wanted to do something about my love. I wanted to do something for God. I wanted to go out and I wanted to hold a sign, like in the song, have a big fat tat, wiggled around, I wanted to go out and do something. But what we have to reflect on is that we need to be humble in how we do that. Because if not, I have two examples of this. There are some really complicated issues in the church right now that I'm not going to touch on because it's my first time speaking A, and B, I just don't feel comfortable doing that yet. But there are some really complex issues that have really intelligent Christians on both sides. People who have studied the Bible more than I have and probably have done a bunch of research, and they disagree with one another. And I think there has to be a level of, when there's so many people who have different opinions, you have to be humble when we come to those things. And even when there are things that seem simple, like there's a big problem with forest fires right now in Moncton, and they're really bad, obviously. And that's one thing we can all agree on are bad. we still have to be humble in how we come to that issue as Christians, right? If we just went in and did what we think was best about asking people what they needed, we could do more bad than we could good. What if we said, this is an extreme example, we just, there's a fire, let's just move you all to your houses, blow up the houses. That wouldn't help with a fire, sorry. Flood the houses, and then, problem solved. No, right? We need to be humble. We need to ask people. We need to be humble when we come to people and offer to help them. And the only way we can get to a level of humility is by self-examination, right? Like, we cannot be humble without self-reflection. This is something that's really stood out to me in my education degree. We have a really big emphasis on self-reflective learning. So you have to reflect on what you are doing and if it's working or if it's not working. And it's so important because if you never self-reflect, then you're never looking back on what you're doing. You're just assuming that everything you're going to be doing is correct. And so humility is essential to love, and we need to self-examine ourselves to be humble. And when we bring humility to every issue, we should be able to realize that people have different perspectives. We should be able to try to understand those perspectives and come to issues very, very loving. But there still are going to be issues. And the second point I'd like to kind of get on is that love corrects with wisdom and kindness. So we can be super humble and we can try to understand people's perspectives, and we are called to. But even sometimes there are going to be issues that we can't just let happen. There are going to be things we don't agree with, evils in the world, or just things that we can't get behind as Christians and as people. And we need to realize that part of our call is to respond. Part of love is correction, right? Like, I think sometimes we lose the point of correction. One of my favorite examples is why does a parent correct their child? It's because they want what's best for them, It's because they want what's best for them. And that's what's at the heart of correcting someone or something. It should be love. And so I think we can sometimes lose that, but so how does this factor into this? Well, when we're taking action, when there are evil in the world or things we disagree with, we need to act. We need to. In this verse, in Romans 12, Paul writes this: "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." And this verse was really stood out to me when I read this passage. What it implies, it's important for two reasons. But what it implies is that it is not always possible to live at peace with everyone. And Paul himself, him and Barnabas split up, right? So we can't always live at peace with everyone around us. And sometimes there are things that we have to disagree with. So if we have a disagreement with a brother or sister, we have a disagreement with people, how do we respond to that? Because we know here that sometimes there are going to be times we can't make peace with everyone. Well, it has to start with wisdom and kindness. There's a Disney animated movie I watched. It's called Far From the Tree. I didn't think anyone would have heard of it. It's a short. It's 6 minutes long. It's about these raccoons. They're the small creature. I don't know how to explain what a raccoon is. It's like a small land-based creature. But so these raccoons, it's about a raccoon mom and a raccoon daughter, and they're on the beach. Why are the raccoons on the beach? I don't know. They just start on the beach. And the raccoons are walking around the beach, and they see this baby raccoon is super excited. It's his first day on the beach, so he's chasing these worms and these birds and everything. And the mom keeps pulling him off from these things and telling him in raccoon language to stand next to her. There's no talking, I'm just assuming, but she yells at him and he sits next to her. So the raccoon runs off and does these things, then she yells at him and he comes back to her. And so the movie keeps going. At one point, the baby raccoon runs into a flock of seagulls when he wasn't supposed to. The mom looked away for 1 second, he ran into these seagulls. And what he doesn't know is that there's a hyena on the other line of these seagulls. It might not be a hyena, I don't really know. There's not normally hyenas on the beach, but it's a big cat creature. So the cat creature sees the raccoon and he chases it. And he ends up scratching it in the face and almost getting it. The mom comes in, jumps in, saves her kid, and brings him to this tree, their home, the tree. And then she yells at her daughter. She yells, in raccoon language, I don't speak it. But she yells, she clearly is judging what she did, and she's very upset because she cared about the raccoon, right? Like, she had a deep care, it's her own child. She had a very strong care, and she yelled because she was so angry that he put himself in risk. But the problem was that really impacted that raccoon. And so that raccoon, he kind of hurt his relationship with his mother. He looked scared in that video when his mom's yelling at him. And so if we don't handle love well, we can do more harm than we can good. We can scare people in correction. If someone's doing a sin and we say, well, you're a terrible person, that's not going to help them want to change at all. That's just going to hurt the relationship to you and maybe even to God. So it's so important that we lead with kindness, that we say, well, how can I correct this person the most kind way possible? And that comes from a place of wisdom. I mean, there are so many issues in the world right now that most people don't have an answer to. And so how we deal with those as Christians is very complex. But it needs to stem from prayer of God and this conversation of humility. It needs to stem with this place of wisdom of asking God, well, what's the best way to deal with this? And then trying to figure out, well, how can I work this out? And that needs to lead it. And we can't always be as wise as God or Jesus, but we can do our best. That raccoon movie plays on, and it does like a time jump, and the baby raccoon becomes the mom raccoon. And her daughter have the exact same beach day. They go to the beach, and almost the exact same things play out. It's almost like one of those movies where the same thing happens over and over again. And her child is again attacked by some sort of beach creature. So she grabs it and pulls him to safety. And then she starts yelling at her child, but then halfway through she stops. And we get a flashback to what her mom did to her. And then she stops yelling at him. She takes the raccoon outside and she shows the raccoon the dangers of the beach. She shows him the hyena that he didn't see. And it's reframed in a way that, like, if we're wise about it, if we show it like that raccoon, if we take somebody and we instead maybe reframe how we correct them, we can make much more of a positive impact. When Jesus corrected people, he did so lovingly. And he should be the guide on this. I mean, Romans 12:10, be devoted to each other in love, honor one another above yourselves. This can also lead into this, right? Like when we honor people above ourselves, we should, even in correction, honor them above ourselves. Even when we're correcting them, we should be honoring them, not condemning them. I'd like to kind of enter the third point now, overcoming evil with good. So first of all, that line, what a mic drop by Paul. What an amazing line. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That's an amazing thing to say, and it sounds really great. What does it mean? What does it mean to overcome evil with good? Well, I think the first thing we have to recognize is that evil does exist in the world. It's really easy sometimes to say that there is no evil, there's just different perspectives and different things happening. You know, like, well, everyone has a different perspective, there are different realities in the world. But the truth is that the Bible tells us that there is evil in the world. And as Christians, we should believe that there is evil in the world. So if there is evil, how do we respond to that evil? Well, we respond with goodness. I think the best example of how to do that is, again, Jesus. I mean, Jesus modeled this so perfectly in John 8 with the woman caught in adultery. The Pharisees wanted blood. They wanted condemnation. And Jesus, if anyone could have condemned her, it would have been Jesus. He could have condemned her. But instead he said, let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. Everyone walked away. Then Jesus turned to her and said, neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin. If anyone could have condemned, it would have been Jesus, but he didn't. And sometimes we might be in that position, but just like Jesus, we should not be condemning others. We should be loving them first. He didn't excuse her sin, but he didn't condemn her either. He gave her grace and pointed her towards a better future. That's overcoming evil with good. I was talking before this with some people who were helping me guide me on this, and one of the lines that stood out to me was, they quoted C.S. Lewis. It was that we should reject the sin, but love the sinner. It is a simple idea, but that's so important, and it ties into all of this. We should reject the sin, but relentlessly pursue the sinner's good. So what does it mean to be a Jesus freak? It means to take our love and put into action. We can only do that by beginning with humility, by approaching the issues in the world with love and kindness, and then letting evil be overcome with good. We don't fight darkness with more darkness, we fight it with light. Jesus was the ultimate Jesus freak. And even in the song, they mention Jesus being so crazy, how he lived a life that all the Pharisees, no one else could understand. He didn't care what labels people gave him. He ate with sinners. He touched the untouchables, forgave the unforgivable. On the cross, while people mocked him and beat him, he didn't call down fire or seek revenge. He prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." That's love in action. That's you overcome evil with good. Because at the end of the day, being a Jesus freak isn't about being weird. It's about being different. And that difference is love.